everybody, it's Elizabeth here and welcome to today's Facebook Live session. I feel like I'm about a minute late because I was trying to get the internet to work here in the office. Every time I welcome you into my office it just gets messier, so sorry about that. One day I'll have a grand clear out, but this time I've got flowers, which is nice, a nice touch. I don't often have those in here. Not a special occasion, just because. So, welcome everybody who's new to the group. And I hope you've had the opportunity to jump into the Facebook group, introduce yourself, and hi Shannon, thanks, and let us know where you are, where you're joining us from. There was a post this week that said, did we have anybody in the group from China? I'm not sure that we do, but if that is you, then by all means put your hand up and let us know where you're from. So we've had some questions. I tend to use these Q&A Facebook Live sessions just to respond to anything that I've seen in the group or the questions that have come to me on email. And I had a couple of bits and pieces today. I shared a picture of my whiteboard, which is over there, which is where I store my notes for these conversations. So let me start by a question that was asked last week, and I didn't get a chance, I didn't see it before we had last week's Q&A. And that was, from Cheryl, how can we get benefit from risk management without it turning into an exercise in documentation? What a great question. The thing with risk management is that we have to remember why we're doing it. The point is to make our projects less risky, more likely to be successful, and just generally to give people confidence that the project is going to continue along the path that's been set out for it and complete in the most successful way. So risk management is a way of alleviating the roadblocks along the way, or predicting what might happen and putting your plan Bs in place. If your risk management approach is just sit down at the beginning, write a risk log that's all the things that might happen, and then put that in a drawer, never come back to it, then you're missing an opportunity to do something proactively about the risks that you've identified. So, risk management should be a continuous thing. So the first thing to do to get benefit out of it beyond that piece of paper that you've created for your risk log should be that you plan some time every week or once a month to go through the open risks and check in with them. Are they still a problem? Who is actively managing them? Is anybody, concerned? Are they more of a problem now than they were a week ago or a month ago? Can we change the status? So it's more of sort of a sense check of what's happening out there in the wider project world, the project around us, and how are we going to influence that by making sure that our risks are being proactively managed. So that continuous check-in allows you to schedule some actions to do something about it. And it might be that actually your action is, I accept that this risk might happen and I choose to do nothing, and that's fine. You might want to review that in a month or so and check that's still an approach you're prepared to take. But it is worth, sorry, I'm distracted by something on the computer. It is worth going back and making sure that the strategies you've chosen to address the risk are still valid. So if you are just going to accept it, fine, but just verify that, check again later. If you've chosen any of the other risk management strategies, you want to be putting in place some tasks that allow you to deliver that. So say you want to transfer the risk to somebody else. How are you going to do that? Who's going to own that plan of action? How are you going to get those tasks into your schedule? And how will you know when it's happened? And then when you transferred the risk, is there any residual risk that remains that's still your responsibility to deal with? And how are you going to record and manage that? So continuously looking at it and making sure that you have identified a management plan with actions and that you follow up on those actions. They can go on your task list, they can go in your Gantt chart. And the other good thing about having actions is that you have an owner. So somebody is taking responsibility for seeing this risk through. It doesn't have to be you. In fact, I would strongly recommend that as a project manager it is not you. You might want to keep responsibility for some of the bigger project high-level risks, but for most of the risks it's much better if you can offset them and delegate them to someone in the team to manage. Then you can hold those people accountable. So as a project manager you can be doing your regular check-ins with risk and checking that those people are actually doing what they said they would, and that when, as a team you're managing the risk to make it go away, or to at least make it be less of a problem for you on the project. So moving beyond the paper risk log and to doing proactive tasks related to risks is how you can get the most value out of it. Okay, I hope that answers that one, thank you. Next up, I had a question, this one came in on email, and this was around PMBOK version 6. So, in case you don't know, PMI are updating their massive Bible of Standard, the project management, a guide to the project management body of knowledge, which is currently in version 5, and towards the end of this year, quarter 3 I think, is coming out the new version of the PMBOK guide, which will be version 6. And the question was, should I take my exam with PMBOK 5 or PMBOK 6? Okay, right, well, having done some looking into what it actually means, the exam itself is not going to change before January. So if you have any intention of passing your exam within the next 6-7 calendar months, then it is most likely that you study under PMBOK 5, do the work, pass the exam, get it out of the way in 2017, and then you'll have that qualification, and you can continue with your PDUs and the PMI membership if you want it, but you'll be done. Now, if you don't think you're going to be able to fit the time in to do the studying this year, then you're going to be taking the exam with PMBOK 6 rules, for want of a better description, and terminology and all that stuff, so you might as well wait until they've issued the new standard, and then learn with the new tools, with the new standard, and then when you come to do your exam, you will have got all the knowledge under your belt. The worst case scenario is that you learn everything in PMBOK 5, you do all your PMP prep right now with the materials available to you today, and then decide that actually you need to park it and you want to take your exam, March next year because something happens and you can't schedule it before then. That will give you a problem because you will have learned stuff that is not 100% going to be reflected in your new exam. Now, I had a look into what the differences are, and it's less than you might expect, although it is going to be much fresher. It's going to, it's a big revision, but actually the nuances of how we manage projects are not going to change that much. So things that I picked out that are changing that are worth mentioning, there's more than this, but these are the headlines. At the moment there are 47 processes documented in the PMBOK guide, and that's going to 49. So 3 are being removed, 3 are being added, 1's being taken away, so there'll be more processes to learn. Great. There's some bits about renaming. So for example, project human resource management is being renamed resource management, project resource management. That brings it in line with what everybody talks about anyway, so that's good. And then project time management is being renamed project schedule management, which again, time management is much more around, for me, how do I get out the door at 5 o'clock? How do I make sure I don't waste time on Facebook during the day? And schedule management is much more what that section of the PMBOK is all about, so that's more relevant too. There is more about tailoring, and there's an emphasis around what processes will be ongoing processes throughout the project and what will be just done as a one-off process. The tailoring point I think is quite interesting because that's exactly the revision that Prince 2 is going through as well, and the next version of Prince 2 will have more about how do you tailor. So I think there's just generally within the project management standards world acceptance that we do have to be a little bit more flexible than what some of the manuals offer us out of the box, or at least people need to be told that that's okay to make those changes. Lessons learned is being updated, and this is fantastic news because there is a shift of focus away from lessons learned being something you do at the end of a project, and it's they're revising it to make the point that you can capture lessons learned on an ongoing basis. Hooray! I wrote a book about this, and suddenly, not suddenly, it's been on the horizon for people, and it's something that Agile has done from the beginning. You capture lessons learned at the end of a retrospective, not at the end of the whole thing. Hi Donna, nice to see you. So I'm really glad that particular part of the PMBOK guide is being shaken up a bit and better aligned to Agile, better aligned to just common sense. So that's good. The ITTO table is changing as well. I think they're going to restructure that, make it a bit clearer, easier to understand. So I know that a lot of people try to memorise the ITTO table. There's no point doing that if you're going to take your exam after the new version of the exam is available in quarter 1 next year. So I know that's a bit of a rambly answer, but hopefully that gives you a bit of a clue as to whether you should be making a decision to take your exam this side of PMBOK 6 or wait till the new PMBOK version comes out. Okay. Phew, breath. Right. Next up, I had a question, and this one has come about because at the moment, some of you might know, I'm teaching a stakeholder management masterclass, and someone in that group asked this question, which I think it's quite relevant to everybody, and that is, how do I hold people accountable? So in the course we went through it, but I wanted to share the answers or the things that I thought were worth covering off with you guys as well, because I know it's something that I get asked a lot when I meet people, because one of the big problems with working with project teams is that you don't manage them, don't manage them directly as a line manager, and people just don't do their work. So how do you hold someone accountable and get them to deliver what they say they're going to do? So we can define accountability as being able to deliver on your commitments. That's what I'm talking about, is making sure that people are delivering on their promises. And it goes without saying that you should always do this. As a project manager, you need to set a good example. If you say you're going to do something, just do it. So the best way to do this is to communicate your expectations clearly in advance, so people know exactly what it is that you're expecting. And in the project world, you can do that with a terms of reference for their work stream, with delegating them a task through your task management app, whatever it is. But making sure that they are very, very clear about what it is that you're expecting them to do. And if it's necessary, how you're expecting them to do it. What format are they going to give you the answers in? Anything that helps them clarify what it is that they're expected to do that and communicate in advance. And the reason we do that is so that you're not setting up people for failure. Because it's really awful. It happened to someone I worked with just yesterday. He spent a long time doing a task that someone had delegated to him, and then the person came back at the end of the day and said, I didn't want it done like that, I want it done like this. And you think, you could have just told me. You could have just told me that in advance and I wouldn't have wasted a day. So don't set them up for failure, just let them know. Okay, so that's step one, communicate your expectations. Then, throughout them doing the work, you need to check in regularly. And this could be anything from a quick phone call, chatting in the corridor, formal status meetings, whatever it looks like, but you're making sure that they are on track to the best of your ability. I mean, they could lie to you, but to the best of your ability, you're giving them the opportunity to ask for help, ask questions, get back to you with a problem, report the fact they're not going to hit their deadlines. You're trying to make it easy for them to tell you what's going on, so that you can then make sure that you've got the opportunity to remove those roadblocks for them, to help them go along there and to find ways to get them back on track. And as Donna says I can see the chat coming up, lots of times people don't know what they want until it's delivered, and I think that is a big problem, especially in some organisations. It's not the end of the world, but if you don't know what it is that you need until it's been delivered, or you're trying to facilitate other people doing work that's been set from you by a stakeholder, then it's fine to say we don't know exactly how this is going to be. Do the best you can and we'll follow up. You can't then tell somebody off. You can't then hold them accountable for not delivering when you didn't set the right parameters at the beginning. So it's a frustrating situation to be in if you end up having to do rework, but at least you knew that might be a possibility. The difficult thing is when someone tells you what they want precisely and you do it and it's not. That isn't what they want. So I think if there is some vagary, just let's be upfront about it and say we might change our mind later. We're doing that at the moment with some software development that we're doing. We're building something and we know that it might change because we've got regulation happening in the background that might force us to change it. But we're not going to put everything on hold until that's through, so we'll just continue with the view that potentially we might have to do some changes later. That's life, isn't it? You just get on with it. So we've communicated our expectations, we have checked in regularly throughout while the work is being done, and then at the end, something's happened, hasn't it? Either they've done the work, which is fantastic, and you can say thanks very much. They haven't done the work, and you think there was perhaps something wrong with that process. Perhaps there was something that is worth going through again. So you can repeat what you've just done, set expectations, check in, report back, if you think that there's value in doing that. Or you can say, and this is quite harsh but necessary sometimes, The person didn't deliver on their commitments. I gave them every opportunity. I took everything else possible into account. I worked with them to prioritise. I worked with their manager to make sure they had time available. I gave them the tools and the techniques they needed. I gave them the support they wanted. And they still didn't do it. And at that point, you need to take off your I'm a very nice person hat and put on your I'm working for the benefit and the service of my project and my company, and find a way to have a difficult conversation with them about the fact they haven't delivered, or get them off the team if you don't want to give them any more chances. And that is just you being commercially astute. It's not about personalities, and that person might thrive in a different environment or on a different project, but for you right now it's not happening, and we cannot afford to carry slackers or people who perhaps don't have the right skills or the right attitude. And I think it's a tough thing for us to do as project managers when they're not our staff, and it might mean that you're without somebody for a while. But, you know, we're business leaders. We are trying to get the best result for our company, and the best result doesn't mean letting our project go late because someone can't be bothered to do their work. So I know that sounds harsh, but if you have genuinely tried everything else and you've got the support of their manager and there's nothing else that you think you could be doing, that's the end game. The end game is they go. Okay, so hopefully that doesn't make me sound too mean. But there you go. Right, so might have been last week, might have been the week before, somebody said they wanted some more book recommendations, so I thought I'd also do a book of the week. And today, ta-da! Today's book of the week is Message Not Received by Phil Simon, subtitled Why Business Communication is Broken and How to Fix It. So as you can see, I refer to this one quite often. It's got lots of stickies in. It's got all these different case studies and examples and some pictures. You know, it's 2015, so it's a couple of years out of date, but the concepts are still very much relevant to today. And the basic principle behind this is that we rely too much on jargon. We rely too much on computer-mediated communications like emails, and we broadcast, which is kind of what I'm doing right now. Sorry. And we don't listen to what's coming back. So Phil Simon has written lots of business books, actually. This is probably my favourite of the ones that I've read of his. And the underlying message, I would say, if I had to summarise it, is cut the jargon and remember who your audience is. So it's quite a sad fact that in a lot of the examples that he gives in here of really awful communications, I can understand them. I understand all the jargon, and I'm not proud of that fact, but there's a difference between being able to understand and interpret and then using it in your own communications. So if people are giving you completely impenetrable business jargon that doesn't mean anything, you need to be able to translate that into something that has some value for your end users, or that talks to them in language that they can understand. So that is today's book recommendation. Right, well then, that's the end of my time for today. So I feel like I've whizzed through all of that, but hopefully some of it was helpful for you. And it just remains for me to say have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you next week in the next Facebook Live video. Okay, thanks, bye.